All right, buckle up because today we are taking a deep dive into A Clockwork Orange, and we're not just skimming the surface here.
No.
You've given us the good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
The 1986 UK uncut version with Burgess's own introduction, so we are going all in.
Yeah, this is exciting because, comparing different versions of a text, especially when there's a whole missing chapter.
Right.
It's like getting a backstage pass to the creative process. We can see how the story changes. And even more than that, I think it opens up a conversation about censorship, about artistic intent, about what makes people so uncomfortable.
Yeah, and you can tell just from Burgess's introduction that he knew this book was going to ruffle some feathers, especially with the Kubrick film. It's almost like he's bracing for impact a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's inviting us in to have this conversation about his work.
There's this really interesting dry wit
Yeah.
that he has in his writing.
Yes.
Like he's totally aware of the reactions it provokes.
Yeah.
But he's not shying away from it at all. He owns it.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, the ugly.
And then he just drops this bomb on us, right? Oh, tell me.
For years, American readers didn't even get the full story.
What?
The final chapter was completely removed from the U.S. editions.
You're kidding.
Can you believe that?
I mean, honestly, it's almost funny when I think about it. The publisher was so worried about the final chapter being too controversial for American audiences.
Right.
So what'd they do? They cut out the part where Alex, our ultra-violent protagonist, actually grows up
I know.
and rejects his past.
It's wild.
It's like they missed the whole point.
It's like saying, here's a cake, but we're going to remove the icing because it might be too sweet.
Exactly. What's the point?
It's mind-blowing, and he even talks about it in the intro. He says, and I quote, "He grows bored with violence and recognizes that human energy is better expended on creation than destruction. My young hoodlum comes to the revelation of the need to get something done in life, to keep the orange of the world turning in the rookers of bog or hands of God, and perhaps even create something music, say. Music. He even mentions Mozart.
It's incredible.
I mean, can you imagine reading that and thinking, nope, too spicy for readers?
I know. It's crazy.
It makes you wonder about the whole censorship thing, doesn't it? Because by trying to make it safer, more palatable, they might have actually done the opposite.
Yeah.
They might have made it bleaker by taking away that possibility of redemption.
Absolutely. And on that note, we have to talk about Nadsat, the slang that Burgess invented for this book.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta be honest, at first it was like I was trying to decipher a foreign language.
It's a trip, right?
Yeah.
Nadsat is really this incredible linguistic experiment. It's like he took Russian Cockney rhyming slang, threw in some made-up words just for kicks,
Right.
put it all in a blender,
Right.
and out comes this immersive, most musical language.
Yeah.
It pulls you right into Alex's world.
It's so effective, though, because you're right. It is jarring at first, but then you start to get into the rhythm of it. You pick up on the nuances, and it's, like you said, you're part of the group.
Absolutely.
You know the in crowd.
You're speaking the secret code.
Exactly like drug for friend, horror show for good, Tolchak for hit.
Yeah, you got it.
I did feel, though, like the language itself almost acted as a filter on the violence.
You're really picking up on something there that's a really astute observation. Because by using this unfamiliar slang Burgess, he creates this distance between the reader and the brutality of what's happening.
Right.
It's like you have to think about the language itself instead of just being bombarded by these graphic images. And he actually said he wanted Clockwork Orange to be a linguistic adventure.
Which is such a power move.
Totally.
Because he's making us work for it a little bit.
Yeah.
You have to engage with it on a whole other level.
Absolutely.
It's not just about the plot anymore. It's about the power of language itself.
And how that language shapes the way we see the world.
Exactly.
Even the darkest parts of it. Think about it for a second. How differently would we experience this story if it were written in plain English?
Totally different.
Totally different, right?
Night and day.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the same story.
It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And speaking of things that make you think, the title itself, A Clockwork Orange, I mean, what a strange image.
It's such a striking image, and it gets right to the core of what Burgess is exploring.
Yeah.
He actually explains it in the introduction. He says, a clockwork orange is basically a metaphor for taking something natural, like an orange, and forcing it into this artificial mechanical behavior, like clockwork.
So it's about that loss of what makes something natural, what makes it its own thing?
Yeah, exactly. That imposition of control from the outside.
So like with Alex and that whole brutal aversion therapy thing?
Exactly. They're basically trying to reprogram him.
Right.
Turn him into a clockwork orange, so to speak.
Make him associate violence with being sick.
Yeah, so he can't even think about it without feeling disgusted.
But then that brings us back to that whole missing chapter dilemma,
Mm,
because is that kind of change even real?
right.
If it's forced, is it really good?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, if you're programmed to be good, does it even mean anything?
right. Where does choice come into play?
And, it's so interesting that the U.S. publisher decided to cut that out because
Wow.
talk about controlling the narrative.
Seriously.
Like, they didn't want readers to even wrestle with that question.
It's like they were saying, nope, no gray areas here, just black and white.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And I think that robs the story of its power because in the full version, we see Alex choosing to move away from violence, not because he's been programmed to,
Right.
but through his own internal process.
Like he's on a journey.
Yeah,
He's figuring things out as he goes.
exactly. And it might be messy.
Yeah.
It might not be a straight line from point A to point B, but it feels more real.
It makes you wonder if real change is even possible without that freedom to choose your own path, even if it's a difficult one.
Right. And that's a question that resonates way beyond the book.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
think about it.
Yeah.
All the ways we try to control behavior in society. Laws, punishment rewards, even just social pressure.
And even now with algorithms
Oh my
and...
gosh, don't even get me started on algorithms.
Right, like, are we really in control of our choices, or are we being subtly nudged in certain directions?
It's like we're all living in a giant experiment.
And if we are being influenced by these outside forces, where does that leave personal responsibility?
That's a slippery slope.
It really is. I mean, knowing about this missing chapter and the publisher trying to control the narrative like that,
Right.
it really makes you look at the whole story differently. It makes you wonder who's really pulling the strings, right?
It's true. It's like this hidden layer of control that you don't even think about.
Right.
And it makes you realize that censorship isn't always about protecting people. It can be about protecting interests.
It's like they're saying, trust us, we know what's best for you.
Exactly. And sometimes what's best is really just what's convenient or what maintains the status quo.
Which is kind of ironic, don't you think? Especially with a book like A Clockwork Orange that's all about questioning authority and control.
Absolutely, because
Yeah.
I completely missed the point. They were so busy trying to control the narrative that they reinforced the very themes Burgess was exploring.
Yeah, like the universe played a big joke on them.
Right. They inadvertently made the case for free will by trying to suppress it.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you really think about it.
It is, and it makes you appreciate the full version even more
Right.
because you see Alex's journey. You see him wrestling with these choices, and it's messy and it's complicated.
When it feels real.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about easy answers. It's about that struggle.
It reminds me of that quote from Burgess where he says something like, writers are rarely their own best critics.
Oh, I love that quote.
I think he knew deep down that this book was going to push some buttons,
Of course.
that it was going to start some uncomfortable conversations, but that's what makes it so powerful.
Absolutely. Art should make us think, make us question.
Yeah, make us squirm a little bit sometimes.
Exactly. It's in those uncomfortable moments that we really grow.
And when we get right down to it, isn't that what a good deep dive is all about?
That's it right there. Pushing past the easy answers, embracing the complexity.
Yeah, and asking those tough questions, even if they make us a little uncomfortable.
Because that's how we learn. That's how we evolve.
That's how we keep the conversation going.
Exactly. So as you dive back into A Clockwork Orange, keep those questions in mind. Let them guide you and see what new layers you uncover.
And who knows, maybe you'll come up with some even better questions along the way.
I have a feeling you will.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into A Clockwork Orange. What a wild ride.
It was a pleasure as always.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those deep dives going.